In this lesson, we'll build the main leg geometry for our solar array. So we've got the base built, and so now we need to connect, create a leg to connect this kind of base here with the foot. And so let's kind of put the foot kind of in a spot where we think we might want it. So thinking about the leg and the scale of the leg, that's probably pretty good. It doesn't have to be exact. We're going to be building one leg going out just in this direction, and then we'll be rotating that later. So we can kind of come to the side here, and you can kind of see how far ahead that is. And so you just think of where you want to put that. The position, not really that important. You just want to have it sticking out a little bit from this base here. And so now let's just draw out a curve the same way we drew out the curve for the revolve, but this time we'll just draw out the curve where we want this leg and the shape that we want the leg to be. So we'll go to Create, CV Curve Tool. Let's start at one end. We'll start kind of up at the base here and just kind of draw this out. And so you can create kind of a curved leg if you want. If you want something that has more sharp lines in it, then sharp corners in it, you can place points a little bit closer together. So we can end that, and then we can come back in and sort of modify these points just by moving them around. So maybe we want to take this down. I want it to kind of come straight in to the base, but maybe after that it kind of slopes down a little bit more. It comes down here. Maybe this we can sort of pull in a little bit. Again, the actual shape is not as important as the fact that you just kind of understand what it is that we're doing. So I want it to kind of come in right at the center of that base. And let's actually extend it down into there slightly. So let's turn off the grid in our main perspective view. And so here you can see that we've now got a curve that's coming in from the base, going down and connecting in with the foot. So if we were to use this curve as a revolve, it would create kind of a cylindrical sort of shape extending all the way around. But that's not what we want. We want to create geometry along this curve. And so in order to do that, we need to use an additional curve. So we'll have one curve here for the path, and then one for the profile. And the profile will be the shape that we want to bring along this curve. So thinking about, if this is a pipe, think about the shape that's being sort of extruded along that shape would be like a circle if it's a pipe. If it's some sort of a conduit, it could be square shaped. You can make a triangle shape. You can make any sort of shape that you want. What we want it to be this sort of closed curve. And so in order to create a circular shape or profile, we just go to Create, NURBS Primitives, and there is actually a primitive circle that we can just bring in. Okay. If we go into our wireframe, you can see there's the size of the circle currently. So we want to have the circle selected. Then we'll Shift select the curve. And then let's go into Surfaces, Extrude, and let's open up the options and make sure. I'm just going to reset all of these back to the way they were. So we want to create a tube style. So we'll select that. The resulting position, we want to be at the path because we want it to be along this curve, and we've already positioned the curve and everything. So we'll set the result position to at path. We'll set the pivot to component, kind of how that, as it goes along the surface, how it curves. And then this is all fine. We'll go ahead and create a NURBS piece from that, and let's go ahead and extrude. And so what that will do is drag this circle along this curve. Now the same thing holds up with the history as we saw before. So if we go into the circle and we now go into the Make NURBS Circle node and we change the radius, that's going to change the thickness of our leg all along this profile curve, which is nice. So we can make that a little bit thicker maybe. Let's actually bring it down a little bit so we have room to add some additional pieces on it. And then you can also modify the path curve as well, and the geometry will follow along. Okay, if we select our geometry, you can see the extrude here. You can see you can still go back and change these different values. So here's without component pivot, here's with component pivot, or you can turn on fixed path or the extrude type. You can change that as well, just kind of flat. So with the tube, it sort of follows along and turns itself as it goes to make sure it's kind of keeping a consistent thickness. And so now we have this nice piece of NURBS geometry. If we want to clean it up a little bit, we can select the curve. You can see I do have it selected. And then I can come in and kind of modify these points a little bit, kind of smooth it out a little, and get it looking exactly the way that you want before you delete its history. Okay, so that's another great way to create geometry using NURBS, is to just use a curve to draw out something like your pipe or your conduit, or in this case our leg, and then extrude another curve along that path curve, creating the geometry. So instead of revolving it around a particular axis, we took another curve and extruded it along the first curve to create our geometry. So just another way of you using curves to create pieces of geometry for a model. So now that we've got this piece, let's take a look in the next lesson at kind of reusing pieces that we have, because we've built this leg and we want pieces to kind of fit on top of it. What can we do to kind of extract detail from this or create additional pieces that fit right on top of this without having to go in and create them from scratch? So let's go ahead and take a look at that in the next lesson.